basketball is my favorite sport.
I love the way
dribble up and down the court.
Whatever happened to Bow Wow?
He got big. He became Big Bow Wow. And he didn't really stay up on his craft, I feel.
Did he have craft?
Fair.
That's a good question.
Fair
Maybe
counterpoint.
this is a future Deep Listens podcast.
A Bow Wow revisionist history.
Okay, let me do the countdown and we'll talk about basketball.
What's that?
It's a sport. Mostly. Sometimes it's a lifestyle.
Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet! Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today it is time once again to venture into our very unfortunately named basketball podcast. Time to get balls deep in the NBA yet again, because basketball is the only sport that has truly survived these trying times. Actually, I guess hockey also is doing okay, but we don't have a hockey podcast because hockey's just fine. I am joined, as always, to discuss the bouncing orange balls by Pete Busby.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Been a long time since we've talked hoops. This is probably also the closest, let's say the best we've done with our postseason predictions, just because all of them have been invalidated. Woo!
Yay!
This week's fun fact is about the Marwari. So it's a Indian battle horse. Apparently a very hardy breed, but the thing to know about them is that the Rajput clans, they were the ones who were breeding these horses, and when they went into battle, they would give them fake trunks for their horses, so they would look like baby elephants, and the adult battle elephants on the other side would instinctively not attack them. So they're basically cosplaying as elephants in order to prevent elephant attacks. And this is from a CNN travel article titled "The Indian Horses Bred to Fight Elephants," if you want to read it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is high-level play.
It's high-level meta.
Yeah. Look, this army, they're rolling hard into elephants. They're specking elephants early. We need to come up with something here. We don't have the resources. We can't spec elephants. You can't fight elephants with elephants.
All we need, fake trunks. We got horses.
We got all these horse points. What are we going to do with them?
We maxed out horses and decorative stitching. I don't know, can we combine these?
You know, that would be a hell of a story lead. The Indian tribe that maxed out on horses and decorative stitching and won the war. And we are also joined, as always, by Chris ZombiePie Redacted.
It's over. We survived it. My fellow Kings fans, a dark era of the Sacramento Kings fandom is over. Vlade Divac is no longer our GM. We are ushering in the new era of GMdom with Joe Dumars, who is questionable at best at his job, but, at least partial success with him versus the cavalcade of dark pain that I've been subjected to as a part of Vlade. But happy to be here, happy to talk about hoops. Unlike the rest of the members of this podcast, this has been a fucking dark train of sadness and pain. But we'll talk more about that later.
When do we have our moment of silence for the Knicks?
This is a great question, Pete. If you are on Discord, which Gino's about to pimp in a little bit, I've been strong-arming Gino to, now you have an excuse to use your NBA League Pass to buy Knicks coverage, and I want day-to-day coverage of Knicks on every single podcast you're on, Gino. This is your fate. This is your destiny. I want reports on Thibodeau's lineups and minutes. I want to know about how fucked are Mitchell's knees. Like, how are any of the draft prospects doing at New York? Come on, give us what the people want.
No one else would want that, and they're not going to be. They're just going to be boring.
They're going to be hilarious.
I don't think they're going to be hilarious. I think they're going to be competent. Like, Tom Thibodeau is a good coach. He will bring them a mediocre amount of success. He will maximize the talent on the roster, regardless of whether they want to be maximized or not. He will do his best to make the on-court product better. Maybe some of the players will get injured. Maybe they won't. But I think they're just going to be a regular, boring, mediocre team that probably misses the playoffs instead of being the laughingstock of the league they've been the last 4 or 5 years. Like, if the Knicks just win 35 games and are fighting for the 8th seed in the East, that's not interesting. Like, it's sad. I think they're going to be stuck there for a long time.
Frankie's knees are fucked.
I think this was the plan when they traded Porzingis. They were like, we don't need Porzingis, we need Thibodeau, and there's no way Porzingis' body can survive him.
RJ's not going to have tendons anymore. He's just going to have powder.
Where we're going, we don't need tendons. Well, ZP, congratulations on surviving Vlade and his reign of terror. I was trying to look up who the last draft picks were of the Sacramento Kings.
Oh, I got them. I wrote them down. My
good
good man. Do you want me to run down these? All of Vlade's draft picks? Before
you do that, just a reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. You can send in emails. You can also support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens.
Don't actually do that, because as it turns out, as I found out, that Gino's actually a part of the Ministry of Truth and regulating what he wants you to say on his Discord. I was unfairly banned by
I didn't
Gino.
ban you. I just suggested banning you.
I was banned for 24 hours. I was not able to comment.
Oh, I didn't do that.
On the Food Channel?
No, I was eating a taco or something. I floated it as an idea, and then I went about my life.
Well,
repent for your crimes.
Between being banned for 24 hours and Billy coming back from the ether to mansplain some bullshit, which, oh boy,
we'll get to that in another episode of the show. Pete, Billy came back with some thoughts on the Talos Principle, and guess how swayed he was.
Oh, 100%. If there's one thing Billy's known for, it's revising his opinions.
It's changing his mind when presented with new facts. Yes,
absolutely.
I know you two have had Billy dig his heels on you in the most baffling manners of possible, but this is the first time it's happened to me, and I cannot.
Oh no!
Essay that he sent me is just fucking bananas. I don't even know.
We'll do that. We'll do that on the main show. But yeah, as someone who's known him for over 10 years now, you can't change his mind this way. This is not how his mind has changed.
And I want to point out, it was a joke.
Oh, I know. We'll get to it, but please now, ZP, tell me about the Kings draft picks and Vlade. Let's send him out right.
Let's just where do I even begin? So Vlade Divac has been the general manager of the Sacramento Kings since 2015. He got his job when Vivek Ranadive took over. And, Vivek wanted to do something that was like a olive branch to the hardcore Kings fans that stuck around and were still concerned that he was going to ship the team to a bigger market. And so we brought back one of the most beloved figures in Sacramento Kings fandom. The problem is that he was completely awful at his job, probably one of the worst GMs in Sacramento Kings history.
And that's hard to do.
And that's hard to do because we've had some pretty bad fucking GMs. But, and what's weird is that Vlade, to the man's credit, and I think we've talked about this before, is every year that he had his job, he got progressively better.
Yeah,
like,
the problem was that he just like started bad.
Last free agent signings, he finally figured out, this is what I can do declining contracts. So every free agent that he signed had a declining contract. And he didn't learn – he learns different parts of his jobs during different intervals. Now, is he good? Do you actually want him as your GM? Absolutely not. You want him maybe slightly more than maybe Phil Jackson as your GM or Isaiah Thomas?
Definitely more than Isaiah.
Yeah,
I like how we're just listing Knicks GMs.
Vlade also isn't a terrible human being, which just going to put that out there. Like, everything he's done post his career, like, in terms of humanitarianism, like, it's good.
It seems like Vlade has a way lower percentage chance of sexually harassing someone in your organization than, like, Isaiah Thomas does.
Okay. So, 2015. Vlade had his first draft pick, and he desperately wants to pair Boogie Cousins with another big so as that they could have at least a decent front court, because he's been playing with Robinson, and it's been a tire fire, okay? So,
and it's worth mentioning that in 2015, the idea that you're going to pair your center with yet another very big person is already falling out of style.
But
the Grizzlies...
it's still reasonable to play a Twin Towers lineup, Gino.
There's a team that did it at the time. It was just the Grizzlies, and they were weird and anachronistic at the time. But regardless, keep
that's
going.
only 4 years out from the Lakers title with Gasol and Bynum.
Yeah,
that's true.
So Vlade uses his first number 1 draft pick to draft Willie Cauley-Stein, which I will go to my grave thinking that Willie Cauley-Stein, had he been in a better situation, could have been developed into a maybe not necessarily an all-star, but maybe NBA second or third team. He could have at least been a top 5 center had he been properly developed. He had all of the physical gifts to be good and at least, a good number 2 option against Boogie. Now,
I could have seen him as a all-defense contender if things went well. I don't see him ever being like an amazing all-around player, but I could have seen him being a useful starter on a championship team.
Yeah, and I guess I saw more of him play, and so I've seen the highlights, like the high points. I've seen a lot of Willie Cauley-Stein's ceiling.
That's a shame.
Unfortunately, Vlade passed on another center that probably would have been better.
Who was it?
He passed on Miles Turner.
Yeah, he would have paired Boogie pretty well.
Yeah, he probably would have been better, because now we know that Miles Turner is very skilled and he does all of the defensive things that Boogie doesn't want to do or refuses to learn how to do.
And he shoots.
Willie Cauley-Stein never did that. Oh, God. So this is going to get way worse, because then we go into 2016.
Uh-oh.
When the Sacramento Kings had 2 picks. So we still have Boogie. So I want to point out, we've got Boogie. We have Willie Cauley-Stein. We still have the rights to Robinson. And I believe we still have Rudy Gay.
Oh, yay.
So we got a lot of bigs. We need shooters because, Tyreek's starting to look bad. Things are starting to go downhill with Tyreek. Now is the time to pick a guard or a shooter.
Who'd they pick, though?
With our top lottery protected pick, they took Marquise Chris.
My man, most improved.
Now, let's be generous to Vlade. Let's say, hey, I think that Robinson, we're probably going to give up on him. Rudy Gay is definitely going to go to a different team, and Willie Cauley-Stein might not be ready to play the 4. So let's be reasonable and say we might need an actual legitimate bench player for Boogie, right? So you had, for the 4 and the 5, you had Taurean Prince and Domantas Sabonis as your other options there.
Sabonis is good.
I would definitely take Taurean Prince over Marquise Chris, my man.
I would take either of them over Marquise Chris.
But and this is just the cherry on top of 2016. We had a second lottery-protected pick, and we used it. We traded up to get Georgios Papagiannis.
Fuck yeah.
That's a tough look. That is a tough look.
And Vlade went public that I think everybody's underestimated this guy. I've seen the tapes from the time in his Greek league, the Euro League. Worth noting, if you wanted to get a good power forward, Pascal Siakam was open.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that we gave Giorgio Papagiannis 2 bites at the apple to play in the big leagues. We drafted him, and then we signed him during free agency after he washed out his first time, and he was terrible both times.
Yeah, he was big and slow and couldn't shoot. Like, he had all the makings of an NBA, like, bruiser / mook. Like the sort of guy, like a Kendrick Perkins type. You know, like a big, slow, burly guy who's going to stand by the hoop and
like,
not do that much.
Best case, Boban, probably.
Sure.
But he wasn't that big.
Boban
Boban's huge.
Bigger. And also, pretty sure, just going to put it out there, I think Papagiannis would have been a second-round draft pick.
Yeah. Yeah, he basically was like a hockey goon. But he was like your, what pick was he, 10? You traded up for him? That's not great. Okay, next. But certainly it gets better from here.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, 2017 is probably the best thing that Vlade ever did, his greatest accomplishments. Now, as we'll talk about later, 2017 was the year that supposedly Sam Hinkie did his great swindle, but it actually didn't turn out that way.
Like everything he does.
Well,
so we traded 2 draft picks for one of the 76ers draft picks, and we actually took a higher draft pick that later became the number 1 draft pick, but and we used our lower draft pick to draft De'Aaron Fox, who is the bright beacon and bastion of hope. As I think I told this to Gino, as Devin Booker was teasing De'Aaron Fox while he was streaming Call of Duty, Devin Booker says, you know, you're the only reason why Sacramento Kings fans haven't pulled the trigger. And then he's like, he's trying to give Devin Booker a hard time. And he's like, you know, have you ever played in a playoff game? They're real fun. You should try it sometime. And it's just, he had nothing to come back. It was bad. Yeah, De'Aaron Fox has been great. But then we got to 2018, and fuck me. So we had a shot at this guy. We had the second pick, and they drafted Marvin Bagley, who I'm not willing to classify Marvin Bagley as a draft bust. I think the dude has only played 2 years. My general rule of thumb is you have to play at least 4 to 5 years before I call you a draft bust.
Well, wait a second.
Is he an MVP candidate yet?
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's not a great look then.
Anyone who wants to look at the tapes when we were talking about this, feel free to go back when I was saying I think that Luka is going to be one of the best, like a guaranteed all-star, like bank it, like within a year or two. And then Marvin Bagley, who is like this physically gifted power forward prospect who like seems like a, you know, viable gamble if you didn't have a guaranteed like perennial all-star sitting there.
But apparently, you know, Vlade probably had issues with Luka's dad. That rumor, every single time that rumor props up, there's like more corroborating evidence to suggest that is actually the real reason.
What was his problem with Luka's dad?
It's some Yugoslavian bad blood.
Okay. Socio-political juju.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's say, De'Aaron Fox is good.
Yeah, very good.
Willie Cauley-Stein probably could have been something.
Buddy Hield was solid. Good pick.
Yeah, you know what? That's the other big thing is the Boogie Cousins trade had you told me when it happened, and in fact, I think this is one of the first basketball conversations I had with Gino on Steam. If you had told me that the Boogie Cousins trade would have actually worked in Sacramento's favor, I would have called you a crazy person, because I was definitely one of those Kings fans that said you give him the max 9 times out of 10. But it turns out that might have been the right call, except for the fact that Luke Walton has completely poisoned the relationship between Buddy Hield and Sacramento, whereas, originally Buddy viewed Sacramento's as his new home, as it completely revived his career, and now he's been given a bench role that is totally unfair to him, and it's not his fault that he's not succeeded this season. But you know what? What you gonna do? His other moves, Vlade, I want to point out.
Also worth saying, the only reason that the Boogie Cousins thing worked out in your favor was because he had catastrophic career-ending injuries that were completely out of his control.
Yes, but I would argue that the way Boogie played, that was starting to become inevitable, and Boogie's style of play has progressively become completely archaic and out of date.
Can we get a quick over-under on Luke Walton's tenure with the Kings? I'm going to set it at 28 games.
I think we're in for the pain train.
Okay.
I think he's gone before the season starts.
I think new GM comes in, he's gone.
We have fired competent coaches with quicker than the amount of time that you're giving Luke Walton. I just want to point this out. We fired Mike Malone while he was scrapping away a 500 record with a team with a bunch of nothing and Boogie Cousins.
Well, at least Mike Malone's not doing a good job anywhere else, so you don't feel bad
I
about
think
it.
that's the reason why I never liked Dave Yeager, because I always harbored some deep-seated resentment of him replacing Mike Malone. And also, I don't like Dave Yeager's style of coaching. But you know what? That's for another thing. I want to also point out that Vlade's free agency signings have been almost as devastating as his draft picks.
What? But he signed Rondo.
Yeah, well, remember how we got Rondo is we gave the 76ers two draft picks, one of which became the number 1 pick, which you then used to draft someone that shall go unnamed, Markelle Fultz. But you had a second draft pick as well. So we gave you 2 draft picks, Nick Stauskas, Kyle Landry, Jason Thompson.
Oh, God.
We gave you 3 players, 2 draft picks, and a lower pick. And you gave us Arturius, whatever the fuck his name was, and Luka Mitrovic. And we used the cap space to sign Rajon Rondo, Costa Koufis, and Marco Bellinelli.
Hell yeah.
That's what we used our draft cap. That's what we used our cap for.
When you can trade away draft picks to get Costa Koufos, you just got to do it every time.
We also used it to get Matt Barnes back, and we had to stretch his contract because his knees were so busted.
Matt Barnes. You got Harrison Barnes too.
I actually think Harrison. So
Harrison's
as we'll
fine.
talk about when we talk about the 76ers, Harrison Barnes is the best, one of the better examples, other than maybe Tobias Harris or, Tobias Harris would be another example. Good player, overpaid. Totally fine player, overpaid.
Sacramento kind of had to do it too, though.
Yeah, and they had to do it because what all-star small forward is coming to Sacramento? Like, no one. But let's just point out some of the other signings that he had to shit can before the end of this year. So we signed Dwayne Dedmon to a 3-year, $40 million contract, traded him before the end of the season.
Amazing. So good. I remember having that conversation too. The problem with signing Dwayne Dedmon for 3 years, $40 million is because you can find a dude who's exactly like Dwayne Dedmon for the minimum.
And we ended up doing that with Rashawn Holmes, which
you did.
You know what? Rashawn Holmes' contract's good. 2 years and $10 million. That's what you should have gone for. We played Corey Joe 3 years, $37.2 million. We paid Corey Joseph over $35 million for 3 years.
Corey Joseph, who was immediately replaced by Fred VanVleet, and that was a great move by Toronto.
We also signed Trevor Ariza for 2 years, $25 million. Traded him before the end of the year. And in order to get rid of his contract, we had to give 2 second-round draft picks to the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, so the Kings, they maybe improve their GM. We'll see. Joe Dumars has won a championship in the past.
And Joe Dumars is, there's a lot of Kings fans who are super excited. What, did you not see how Joe Dumars, won a championship and then completely ran Detroit into the fucking ground? This is revisionist history. What part of that did everyone forget? What part of trading Chauncey Billups for a washed fucking Allen Iverson has everyone forgotten about? How did people forget that?
See, I didn't forget that. I just think that Joe Dumars has done something meaningful at one point in his life as a GM, and Vlade hadn't. So there's at least a track record of Joe Dumars being able to do some things properly. And that might be useful. I don't know. So with that, let's now turn our attention to the bubble. So the NBA has been operating in a bubble for the last now almost a month. And they basically have hammered out, I think, the gold standard for how to operate a league in COVID times. They took 22 teams, brought them to a facility in Orlando, Florida, one of the epicenters of the coronavirus, which they didn't know that when they booked all the stadiums, but, circumstances worked out the way they did. They have quarantined all of their teams are in a bubble where they are not exposed to people outside of the NBA circle. They are tested multiple times a week using rapid saliva-based tests that the NBA helped pioneer with, I believe, Yale. And now those tests have actually started hopefully trickling out to becoming more mass availability, to being available to people over the counter. So they actually managed to do almost kind of a control study on coronavirus testing. And in that bubble, they've been able to run regular games. They've been able to keep competition up. The product on the court looks pretty much the same, and no one has gotten sick from inside the bubble yet. There has not been a person who has contracted the coronavirus inside the bubble. There were some people who came to the bubble sick and were quarantined until they were well. There were a few incidents where people broke the protocol with the bubble. They punctured the bubble temporarily.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about Lou Williams really quick?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I always want to talk about Sweet Lou.
Do you know what Sweet Lou did, Pete?
I got buckets?
To violate the sanctity of the bubble?
No, I don't. What did he do?
Oh, you don't?
You don't know what happened? He went to a strip club to get
No. Wait. First, he went to a funeral. That was why he had to leave Orlando.
Okay, reasonable.
Then he was in Atlanta, and he wanted to get food, so he went to a strip club.
For food?
For wings. For chicken wings. For spicy lemon wings. This strip club apparently has an item on the menu named after Lou Williams.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course.
And then he came back to the bubble, and he had to be quarantined for a few days because he went to a strip club.
Sweet Lou. Come on, man. You're better than that.
But on the upside, this led to one of the best investigative bits of journalism I've seen out of the NBA in years.
Ever.
Where someone at The Athletic went to the strip club to see, are these wings in fact that good?
And they found out that they are indeed very, very good.
They are indeed that good.
Well, at least Sweet Lou, to break quarantine, takes a spot.
Yeah.
But also, not sure if anyone heard, well, I just muttered it earlier, but fuck Dwight Howard. It turns out that not only is he an anti-vaxxer, but he is a supporter of QAnon.
Really? Well, all right.
He follows some QAnon people.
I'm not surprised. Like, that seems like something Dwight Howard would do.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely fits. He's terrible. Like, for a
I
whole...
mean, I was gonna give him like, props for being willing to play off the bench, and he was really good for the fucking Lakers this year. Like, he
True.
was there. He was very good for the Lakers, and it was actually nice and humbling to see, oh my God, Dwight Howard actually made the attitude adjustment that he's been promising for like a decade. Nope.
So if anyone wants to check out the article I talked about Sweet Lou's trip to Magic City,
That's the strip club's name?
yes, the article is by Chris Krishner, and he said that Tropical Delight gave him recommendations for what to order on the menu next time.
Tropical Delight being a stripper's name?
It's spelled Tropikal
Okay.
Delite.
All right. Respect. It's a good stripper name.
It is. It's a really good one. So yeah, the bubble has been phenomenally successful up until now. No one's gotten sick. The games have been able to run smoothly. There have been like solid broadcasts. It's led to a lot of really great moments of broadcast teams, like the home broadcast teams broadcasting from their booth in their home stadium, just completely empty with all the lights off when they cut back to studio.
I don't know if Pete is aware of it. It's really cool to see Matisse Thybulle become an internet sensation as he's created these daily vlogs of what it's like to be in the bubble.
Not only is Thybulle an internet sensation, which I appreciate, he's actually a very good basketball player as well.
He is.
So he's got his side hustle going.
There's a great video.
It's almost like he would be worth starting versus the other option for that position.
Almost. There was a great video of him noticing one of the sideline cameras and then getting freaked out because it was tracking him and following him, and so he ran away from the sideline camera.
So just while we're talking about things like that, I would still think Mike Beasley rubbing a different player's knee is the best NBA gif there is.
Yes, it's really good.
It's so funny. It's maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, do you think the other dude just, for a second, just didn't, what the hell's happening here?
Yeah, maybe he thought it was just, the same way you, give a guy a little punch in the arm, a little encouragement. Maybe that's what he thought it was.
Man, we need to get Michael Beasley back in the league. Okay, so with that, the success of the bubble, any opinions on the bubble? Have you been watching games?
Yeah, Dame Dollar is a very, very bad man.
Is there anything about the production or about the games, the weird the fans who are digitally?
I really liked TJ Warren setting the 76ers on fire.
Yeah, he did. That was good. I don't like the crowd noise. The fake, non-synced, pseudo noise. I'd rather things just be in silence, I think.
I don't like the white noise. I want to be able to hear people cursing each other out.
Yeah, especially when Dame's telling everybody to put a little respect on his name.
Yeah. I like the digital fans, as goofy as that is. I like that sometimes, someone's way up on their camera, and so they look huge, and then someone's, 5 feet behind their camera, so they look tiny, and they're all superimposed onto, jerseys of the home team that they're rooting for. I love how shoddy it looks. I like when people randomly, have their dog in the camera. I like when they cut to free throws and they superimpose behind the basket all of these fans, trying to put the hex on the person who's shooting. But people need to get better in their distraction game. We need more absurdity in those cameras. And other than that, I think, the games have been good, the production has been solid, and it's led to the actual personalities having a little bit more personality because they're working with shoestring budgets in ways that they're not used to. So sometimes in a game you'll get a cut back to the home team again in an empty stadium with the lights off, and they'll just have like food in front of them because they're eating lunch. And that's fun. It's fun when they're just like, hey, what is that? Those are chicken wings. Okay, cool. And now back to the game. Everything feels really low key. Have either of you seen the influencer stream that they have?
Oh God, it's so bad.
Yeah, there are options on League Pass now. You can do home, away.
So on the one hand, I feel like this is the natural progression of what the NBA's relationship with NBA 2K has been. Like, I feel like we've already been introduced to the, as we all know, there's an NBA 2K esports league, and the people there are big, let's say big and then move on from there. But I feel like we're one step away from, like, I'm going to have to listen to PewDiePie fake interview about how much he really likes watching LeBron James.
Yeah, the influencer streams are super weird in exactly that way. And as someone who owns a Clutch Gaming jersey, which is the Houston Rockets esports league affiliate, it's weird. You cut to a stream and it's just two Twitch people talking over the game, and I don't know who they are. They're all teens, it would seem. Like teens and 20-somethings. And they're just trying to always fill the dead air, but they're not basketball analysts.
I was going to ask, I haven't watched any of this. Like, do the people have any, like, acumen, like any knowledge about the game?
Not the ones that the one that I watched was insufferable in the 5 minutes I was watching it, so I just gave up on it. But maybe they're great. Maybe some of them are great. Can we be influencers?
I watched one as well, and they were slightly better, but I would say the thing that really rubbed me the wrong way was transitions, for example. When you're transitioning from, like, they would not use the right lingo. It's like, oh, he got the ball and then he passed it. It's like, we're on the fast break now. Like, you don't need to. The stream that I saw, they literally tried to kind of break it down as if they were commentating over an esports or a fighting game tournament, where you're breaking down every bit and piece, and I felt like they were talking too much. Whereas, when you're watching sports, it is a skill to know to when you stop talking and let the game just happen, and then commentate.
Yeah, they very much had the Twitch aesthetic. There's no dead air. You can't let anything speak for itself. You need to be making comments about everything you see, or else you cease to exist. Yeah, it's weird. I'll watch a few more and see if they get any better, but it was very off-putting when I saw it. And you also have the cameras on the streamers' faces, too, which was weird, because I'm trying to watch a basketball game. So without further ado, let's discuss the playoffs a little bit. So here are the pairings. In the West, we've got LA versus Portland. So that's the 1 versus the 8 seed. We've got Houston versus Oklahoma City. We've got Denver versus Utah. And then the LA Clippers versus the Dallas Mavericks. Any of these jump out to you?
Free the Suns.
Oh, yeah, man. The Suns not making it or not even getting into the play-in game after going 8-0. Rough break.
I've been meaning to bring it up. Like, there was, in hindsight now, there was no reason to bring 11 teams into this thing on each conference. There was no reason to have 22 teams.
Well, it wasn't 11 teams from each conference. It was 9 teams from the East and 12 teams from the West. No, wait, 13 teams from the West.
But
Right. Well done.
I will say this is the best that Devin Booker's looked, and it looks like Monty Williams might actually be a good coach.
Yes.
But that's rough. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, Dame was a very bad man. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, this might be one of the best. Since the Warriors beat the Mavericks, this might be one of the most interesting 1-8 matchups in the NBA playoffs in a very long time.
Why do you think so?
All right, like, I still think the Lakers are going to win, but Dame's a monster. They got back Yusuf, who was killing it for them down the stretch. I just feel like not the Clippers. Clippers are good too. The Trailblazers have the firepower to at least hang, even though I do think they'll lose. They can take a few, I guess is what I want to say.
I want to point out, like, the Lakers looked incredibly vulnerable despite being the first seed. Their offense was incredibly inconsistent, despite the fact that they spent so much money to get shooters. Everyone's either gotten sick, injured, or has just not panned out for them. And the Lakers are still dealing with an inordinate number of injuries, and I think that bodes poorly with them. So Avery Bradley and Rajon Rondo are still out, which I can't believe I'm saying something about Rajon Rondo in 2020 in a positive way, but when the option for that position is J.R. Smith or Dion Waiters, like, we've got a problem.
This is also the time when home court advantage will probably be the least important ever, maybe. So that helps Portland.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think that the Lakers just need to show up and play just okay. Because Portland needed Dame putting up 40, 50, and 60 to beat mediocre teams that didn't even make the playoffs or, like, would not do well in the Western Conference playoffs. I don't think you can hide Melo being in your starting lineup. Or he's still in the starter. He's the starter now, right? He's still a starter.
Yeah, because Zach Collins is only day-to-day, and they put Melo on the floor.
Yeah, I don't think you can hide him. I don't know that they have anyone on the entire Trailblazers roster who can guard LeBron credibly. Like, not a single person. Anthony Davis, I think they've got better answers for. I think Yusuf Nurkic or Zach Collins could potentially at least guard him. Like, they wouldn't win, but it's not a joke. I just don't see anyone. Like, is Melo the best fit for guarding LeBron? He might be.
Sad.
That's not good, though.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be a sweep, though.
I mean, it might be 5-1. I think it might be a sweep. Like, I as much as I have faith in Dame,
Really?
I just think that these teams are really poorly matched. Like, Portland,
I don't see a sweep.
Yeah,
I could see 5-1.
I was thinking 6-2.
Yeah, I would more err towards Pete's line of thinking. I'm thinking that they could at least take 2 games.
CJ has a broken back?
I mean, did you?
It's one vertebra. He has
one-
so many.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I watched more Lakers games than you, Gino. Like, the Lakers had huge issues with their offense during the bubble. Like, they had huge issues, like, trying to figure out who gets what minutes.
I just think that at the end of the day, it's hard to know with, like, the Lakers and the Bucks, and to some extent the Clippers. Like, all the teams who were locked in on their seed had nothing to play for this entire time. All they had to do was make sure that their starting players did not get injured. And they largely did. Like, Milwaukee, after their first game, basically played Giannis 20 minutes or less every game.
We'll get to it, but I actually thought that the Bucks looked also equally inconsistent in the bubble, and they showed major vulnerabilities in terms of, especially on their defense.
And I think we'll get to that, but I think that my point here is that LeBron didn't play the minutes he will play when the games matter.
Well, they're going to need to, because without him taking a massive amount of minutes, that front court's also going to have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Danny Green on the 2.
Danny Green's great. This will be fine. I think the Lakers
would you
will get
take
it.
Danny Green over CJ?
No, but I would take Danny Green as a starter he's like the perfect guy to play alongside LeBron and AD. He's like the exact type of guy. He doesn't dribble ever. He shoots when he's open, and he's accurate. And he plays hella good defense.
All right. So moving on, the next matchup.
Clippers-Dallas.
I
think
think
this is interesting?
Probably going to be the most. This is probably going to be the most anticipated matchup.
I mean, you have the best offense in NBA history.
Yep. And as we kind of predicted, yes, they didn't play the entire season together consistently, but it turns out Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are actually a really good combination.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah, I think that this is probably a 5-game series, I guess. Like, as good as Dallas is, maybe 5 or 6. I just think that Dallas is going to have a really hard time with how deep the Clippers are. Like, they'll get Montrezl Harrell back.
Yeah, I just don't know So is Pat Bev still out?
Yeah. He was hurt when last I saw.
Yeah. Injuries are really going to be the big thing here. Although I will say, when I saw the Clippers play and like Zubac needed to tap out and Montrez wasn't back, it was really fun to see Joakim Noah come back. It was great.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, I keep saying at the end of the day,
Joakim might get a fucking ring. Just think about that.
That'd be great. I think here that the Clippers are probably going to be able to gut this one out. As good as Dallas is, we might end up seeing a little bit of Luka getting exposed to two of the best, maybe 3 or 4 perimeter defenders in the league for the entirety of the game. And I think I lean towards Kawhi and PG being able to hobble him enough to win those games.
Oddly enough, the biggest concern for them is Kristaps Porzingis. Like, he has had some real good moments, but I mean, when he came back, obviously he came back from an injury, but it took him a significant amount of time to just adapt and be like 80 to 70% of what he was in New York.
But now he has, and he's good. Without having a good secondary ball handler and playmaker alongside Luka, I think they're going to have trouble with the combination of Kawhi and
well, we
PG.
got Pete here. Pete,
Sure.
you can be the tie-breaking vote here.
Sure.
Gino and I have had a bit of a spat about whether or not Tim Hardaway Jr. is actually a good player for the Dallas Mavericks.
No. Not a good player.
Okay.
Is he worth $80 million? Like, is he an above-average shooting guard?
How many years does he have?
This is his contract year.
But it was $80 million over how many years? 4?
Think so. I think he was like $20 million a year.
He's giving you 16 points.
20 mil.
Is he an average shooting guard? Is he above average?
I would give Tim Hardaway $20 million a year.
What? Why?
Gino, at the very least, sign him and then trade him. Get something out of him. There's a team that probably needs or wants him. I don't understand why you don't see the appeal of that either. It's the big open-ended question for the Dallas Mavericks is, what do you want out of Tim Hardaway Jr.? If you don't want to keep him, then you sign him and then you trade him.
What's the opportunity cost here, too? Like, who else would they have spent that money, I guess? It's a tough question to answer in a vacuum.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough question. I just don't. For me, Tim Hardaway Jr. is a league average shooting guard. And I don't want to play that.
I think that's a little harsh.
That is harsh. I mean, he's done well as the third option on the Dallas Mavericks. He's even had times where he's the second option.
Like, I think the best argument in your favor, Gino, might be just how good Rick Carlisle is.
Yes.
Like, how much of this is Tim Hardaway and how much is it like Carlisle could do this with, damn near anybody?
Here's a question. Would you rather have Danny Green or Tim Hardaway Jr.?
On the Mavs? I mean, this goes back to ZP's question, though, too. Like, if you take the ball out of Luka's hands, who else is creating for them?
Yeah.
That's true, but I don't
Danny
think
Green's not going to pass the ball.
No, he is not. Danny Green is the period at the end of a sentence. He does not do anything else.
He does that very well, but that's what he does.
And he defends like hell. Let me just see Tim Hardaway Jr.'s assist numbers, because I don't think he actually, he assists himself.
They're not great, but at the end of the day, I mean, he does enough.
1.9 a game. His PR is 14.5. So his win share is 4.4. Like, his numbers here are really average. He creates for himself. Like, would you rather have Tim Hardaway Jr. or Lou Williams?
All right, like, Sweet Lou's better than Tim Hardaway Jr. At least
I know,
on the court.
And he's on the bench because you can't play him in certain matchups. Like, that's my stance on Tim Hardaway Jr.
Okay.
Like, I think he's overpaid. He's okay, but he's overpaid.
Okay, so next matchup, most boring matchup of the Western Conference.
Denver versus Utah. The Battle of the Mountain Time.
So, apology, sorry to Jokic as much as I love him, but Michael Porter Jr. was really the MVP for the Nuggets in the bubble. It's great that he came back, and yeah, it turns out that he might actually be what the Denver Nuggets needed all along.
Yeah, I always thought he was going to be a difference maker for them, and he's finally sort of turning it on. Like, the dude is a matchup problem.
The problem is, I actually think that Utah might have a bit of an edge against the Nuggets just because. So Utah is probably better in covering the post, and the Denver Nuggets have been so streaky at shooting threes that I don't know if they have enough perimeter shooters to get around the normal route of beating Rudy Gobert, which is just shoot.
Well, how much do you think Rudy Gobert really matters for Jokic? Like, it's not like it's like Embiid or somebody who's just like, all right, let's feed him the ball and let him bang. Like, Jokic isn't a guy that, like, interior defense matters as much as some others.
Sure. And I think Bojan is still out, so that's also going to be a huge problem for Utah. I don't know. It basically comes down to which mountain do you like better, right?
I mean, I've been high on the Nuggets since day one. I really thought they were honestly going to be even better than they were. And especially now that Porter's starting to fill things up. I just don't like Connolly's been sort of a shell like this year. I just don't think Utah has the points to hang. Like, I know their defense is incredible, but you'd only slow down a team like the Nuggets so much.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my perspective is like it wouldn't surprise me if the Denver Nuggets get bounced in the first round.
Okay, I'll give you that. Of all the like favorites headed into the first round, I think the Nuggets might be the most vulnerable. I'd give you that.
And I think that skinny Jokic is still untested against another big. But the flip side of that is that Bol looks kind of good.
Oh, hell yeah, Bol looks good.
But I don't know. I would like to see the Nuggets go just because I think that the Utah Jazz have some pretty big decisions coming up. Like, I think we've mentioned this before, but Rudy Gobert, as much as he is a great player, I would not give Rudy Gobert the max.
No,
and
you can't.
You can't. I mean, he doesn't. Every single time the Jazz have been put up against a team like the Houston Rockets, they have lost decisively. And I don't know. Maybe I would go with Nuggets in 6, possibly Nuggets in 7.
I'd be surprised if it went 7.
Really?
I think the Nuggets are good enough that they can dispatch the Utah Jazz. Because like this seems to me like it's a version of the Portland problem, but even more serious. Like the Jazz need Donovan Mitchell to do too much to hang. Like, they say defense wins championships, but like, you need some offense too.
Yeah, it'd be a much different situation if Bogdanovich was there, but he's not. Am I mixing up my Bogdanoviches?
You said my Bogdan. Bojan.
Oh, Bojan. Yep, sorry. Bojan. If Bojan was there, I think that they would have a much better shot. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think the Nuggets just have too much firepower now that Michael Porter Jr. is in the starting lineup. Now, I think the most interesting Western Conference matchup, Houston versus OKC.
I just can't bring myself to care about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, this is the most watchable the Houston Rockets have been just because of the chaos factor. I was not a huge fan of the Houston Rockets of yesteryear, but I find watching this version of the Houston Rockets, like the small ball Houston Rockets, to be some of the most fun basketball just because it's crazy.
Now that Rocco is basically playing center.
Yeah. Rocco
Not basically,
plays center.
He is.
PJ Tucker does matchups that Russell Westbrook can't do defensively, but Russell Westbrook attacks the rim like he's a center. It's crazy.
Man, I want Russell Westbrook setting picks and then rolling.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he's going to be. We should mention he'll be out the first couple games, though.
Yeah, he is.
Yes. Yeah, I love what Houston has done. They took. Does anyone remember when VCU made it to the Final Four in the NCAA tournament
Yeah,
with their Havoc system?
that was Shaka Smart still, right?
That was Shaka Smart. This really reminds me of their approach to basketball. Like, they were running constantly. They played basically almost entirely smalls. Almost everyone was undersized. And they just basically blitzed. They, like, doubled people constantly. They were creating turnovers, just running all the time, and just tried to run people off the floor because they knew that they were always going to be undersized and they didn't have the talent necessarily to win a fair fight, so they were going to make everything just grimy. And Houston, like, they're not doubling constantly, but they're attacking passing lanes, they're gang rebounding, they're doubling any post-up attempt that isn't, like, they let James Harden and PJ Tucker get posted up and just do their best against larger players, but anyone small who gets caught on a post-up, they will double. They are flying all over the place. And they're just super fun to watch. Like, PJ Tucker and Rocco have never had so many open threes. Like,
This has
everyone's
also been probably the best that Russell Westbrook's looked since, maybe his peak in OKC.
Yes.
He's finally learned that, maybe I should just attack the rim.
Yep, this style of play is perfect for him. Like, the reads are very easy. Jeff Green is open every time. Like, whoever's being guarded by the opposing center is always open. And, like, ludicrously so. Every game that I've watched of theirs, I've never seen so many just wide open three-point attempts. And it's almost a shame that Houston doesn't have a ton of incredibly plus three-point shooters. Like, they have some good three-point shooters, but if they had, like, 3 or 4 40% free three-point shooters, this team would be much scarier than it is right now. Right now, I think that they're just like, they average out to being an above average team when their style of play could give them an even bigger edge.
We can have the conversation later about whether or not this is actually sustainable in the long term, but I think we also are doing OKC and Chris Paul a huge disservice not to mention them and how they are Schroeder. By far the biggest. Dennis Schroeder, yeah, sure. Are the biggest surprise this year, by far.
I might quibble with you for the Raptors, but they're definitely up there.
As someone who had the Raptors at number 2 in my preseason predictions, I disagree.
Completely invalid, Gino. Those preseason predictions no longer exist.
That's true. That's fair. But yeah, I think OKC is just an example of what happens if you just assemble a team of professionals and you just let them go out and play basketball. Like, there's not a single minus player in their rotation. Every one of them is at least good to great. And they just kind of are doing almost a Spurs impression, where the Spurs would trot out this team that on paper didn't look very good, like 3 or 4 years ago with the aging Tim Duncan core. But they managed to still just roll teams because everyone knew what they were doing. They had played together so long and they were well coached that they just beat teams straight up. And Danilo Gallinari has always been a borderline all-star when he's healthy. Chris Paul is still one of the greatest point guards to ever play. Steven Adams is a great center.
Just a tank.
Just a scary, scary, huge man.
Yep.
But then again, worth mentioning, I do not trust Chris Paul in the playoffs.
Sure.
I don't trust Chris Paul's knees in the playoffs. I'll preface that.
Yeah, he still seems like he'd be super unfun to hang out with, too.
That's definitely true. I don't know where Chris Paul is going to find his good matchups against Houston. And I don't know if you can play Steven Adams against Houston.
That's an interesting question.
Mm.
You might be able to Tucker.
Yeah, but is Steven Adams fast enough? I think is a big question.
True.
And if Steven Adams is going to be guarding PJ Tucker, like, what is the use of that? Like, he's then not protecting the rim. You'd rather have someone who's not going to get pump faked and blown by.
Right. And Steven Adams isn't the sort of guy who's going to hurt you too much, at least on mismatches on the other end.
Yeah, he's
Like, you're
not
gonna
posting
spend a
you
game-
up.
Yeah, you're not going to spend a game dumping it into Steven Adams.
No. The only way he can really hurt you is on offensive rebounding, which, like, maybe he can against that small of a lineup, but most of the teams, the gigantic teams that have played Houston, have not been able to pulverize them in the boards the way that you'd think. So yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. Then going to the East, we've got Milwaukee versus Orlando in the 1 versus 8. We've got Toronto versus Brooklyn, Boston versus Philly, and Indiana versus Miami. So Milwaukee versus Orlando, I think
it's
that's
going to be
fun.
pure murder. But I will say, just to go back to my first point, is it will be interesting to see if Orlando can steal a game and kind of codify some of the concerns that people have raised about the Milwaukee Bucks, because Orlando is a very gritty, defensive-minded team. But more than that, they can space the ball. They can space the floor decently. And the big thing that I felt when I watched, the Bucks go 3-5 in the bubble is they cannot defend the three-pointer. They just can't. They have 2 Lopez brothers. They've got Giannis, and Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe cannot guard the perimeter to save their damn lives.
I disagree wholeheartedly. I think they could if they wanted to, and they have been letting people shoot open threes a little bit just because they have nothing to play for.
And Bud's whole focus is protecting the rim. That's his priority above all others.
And I think that once we get into games that matter, Giannis will play 30 minutes instead of 15, and then there go all of the flaws. It reminded me a little bit of when the Cleveland Cavaliers, towards the end of seasons with LeBron, would be looking a little bit lackadaisical. They'd look like they were vulnerable. We'd get a bunch of takes about how they weren't going to be very good. And then we'd get to the playoffs and they'd 4-0 the first team that they played and then would barely get challenged until they made the finals. When you're really good and you have nothing to play for and you're going to be playing against scrubs, everyone's just resting and they're basically going through drills during live games against real opponents. So we'll see what happens. I bet that this is a 4-0. Orlando just doesn't have the firepower. They have no one who can guard Giannis.
I think it's such a mismatch. I think the Bucks might win in 3.
Yeah.
Hey, but I think it is worth saying, Markelle Fultz looking pretty good right about now.
Yeah, good for him. I'm glad he's sort of gotten it together some, even if it's not with the Sixers.
Yeah, I wouldn't have abandoned him the way the Sixers did.
They sort of had to.
I mean, once you've got this sort of weird relationship with your fans, it's going to be very awkward for Markelle Fultz for the rest of his career in Philadelphia, but it was not like he was not still physically gifted, even if his shooting abilities even if he never learned how to shoot at an average level
but if
again.
We want to talk about, you gave Marvin Bagley a hard time. Boy, does Mo Bamba look bad.
God, I thought he was going to be good, too.
Oh, God, Mo Bamba does not look good.
Yeah, he's definitely the worst basketball player with a Drake song, right?
I can't.
So it's the next one's the Raptors versus who? I forget.
Brooklyn, which is fine. Good for you for forgetting that they exist.
Hey, you know what? Brooklyn, I continue to be very high on Karis LeVert, but I suspect that he will be traded once this is all done. And I'm just going to say this. I missed the Brooklyn Nets last season. It would have been great if this Brooklyn Nets team, if we still had the D-Lo bench dancing Brooklyn Nets, man, I miss that team. I'm not saying that they would have been a team worth keeping instead of, rolling the dice on Kevin Durant, but I miss that team. I miss Kenny Atkinson. I miss them.
I also never have to watch DeAndre Jordan play basketball again.
Well, that's fine because the Nets aren't paying him to play basketball. They're paying him to go hang out with Kevin Durant and play video games.
Yeah, which, it might be worth it.
Totally. He seems like a cool guy. But yeah, I think that this Nets Raptors matchup is another 4-0 walkover. Brooklyn was talking a whole lot of yang during their time in the bubble. I mean, they brought Jamal Crawford back from retirement.
And then Jamal Crawford immediately got injured.
Weird. Can't believe it. 40-something-year-old Jamal Crawford got injured playing for a terrible team. But yeah, the Nets have none of their important players except for Karis LeVert healthy and Jared Allen. So Spencer Dinwiddie didn't even come to the bubble. Kyrie is injured. Kevin Durant is injured. So Toronto, I think they're one of the most consistent teams in the NBA.
And,
all of their players are good.
Marc Gasol finally starting to look like good old Marc Gasol again. During the regular season, he was looking like maybe you're just Frankenstein here, but now he's slimmed down and he looks like he's in good shape now.
Yep, and he's still super smart.
Probably
Always
one
in
of
the
the
right
smartest
place.
bigs in the league.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
So now in the 3-6 matchup, we've got Boston versus Philly. If Ben Simmons was still healthy, I would have liked this matchup a lot. It would have been interesting.
Okay, it pains me to say this because I don't like talking positively about a team that Bill Simmons supports. But this Kemba Walker young core Boston Celtics team is a lot of fun. I like seeing all of these young pieces work with a veteran. I like seeing that it turns out that all Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum needed was a good teammate, even if said teammate is objectively worse than previous teammate Kyrie Irving. And, you know, one of my favorite moments was watching Kemba Walker basically passed the ball to Jason Tatum and he lost the game-winning shot. And he says, no, that's okay, dude. Just take that shot. Take that shot 9 times out of 10. Like, he's just encouraging him when, you know, this time last season, probably Kyrie would have been a piss baby about that.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing how many teams get better once Kyrie Irving leaves.
And yeah, Kemba Walker's really good, guys. He just needed a team that was relevant and not full of bad ideas like goddamn Bismack Biyombo's contract and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, because Jesus Christ.
I mean,
I hate to say it, Ben, but I would have probably picked the 76ers, but Ben Simmons being out eviscerates their chances.
Yeah.
I really do feel that way.
I probably still wouldn't have picked them, but once Ben Simmons is gone, there's pretty much no shot at all. But silver lining is we're approaching closer and closer to the repudiation of the process, and we can all stop pretending that it worked.
It totally worked.
It totally did. So, Pete, you have to at least agree that Ben Simmons was the best player on the 76ers this season.
No.
Wait,
Joel
what?
Embiid
No?
was.
He played more games than JoJo this year.
Who cares? Pete, go ahead.
Man.
When he
This
was
is
doing
like
his solo
kind
show,
of a
he looked
down
really
year
good.
for Simmons too. Like, I still think it's Embiid. I think it's closer than Gino's making it seem, but I do think it's still JoJo.
I mean, JoJo's maybe the defensive player of the year when he cares, and he's easily the most unguardable post player in the NBA at this point. For whatever that counts. Ben Simmons is really good, don't get me wrong. I just think JoJo's on another level. Like, JoJo could be the most dominant post player since Shaq if he wanted to be. If he'd just drink slightly fewer Shirley Temples and dedicate himself just a little more.
I just think that it's a weird matchup, and I just don't think that that roster works. And I feel like we've talked about this every single time that we've allowed Pete to talk about the 76ers.
It's fine. I never want to again, so we can stop forever.
That's fair. All right, and then in the 4-5 matchup, we've got Indiana versus Miami, which... Oh, wait, we didn't say... So Boston, what do we think? How many wins?
Boston in 6.
That seems about right. And then 4-5, Indiana, Miami. Indiana, being a lot more functional than I expected them to be
Sabonis, man.
without Domantas Sabonis.
Well, surprise, surprise. Oh, wait, is Miles Turner still day-to-day?
I don't know.
Not
Yeah,
sure.
Miles Turner is still day-to-day. Which, surprise, surprise, it turns out that Miles Turner plays significantly better when Domantas Sabonis is not on the court. I feel like we've talked about that as well. They've got to make a decision because this is starting to get stupid.
Who would you pick?
Sabonis every single time.
Okay, good.
Like, it's not even a contest. This is like, I mean, it's not a debate. I don't know.
Yeah, just asking. Just seeing how everybody felt about it. I agree.
But yeah, T.J. Warren, man, who would have thought that outside of Dame, T.J. Warren would be the MVP of the bubble?
Did to the Sixers.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it Devin Booker and Dame and then T.J. Warren? Those are the 3 MVPs of the bubble. But yeah, T.J. Warren, I think, as awesome as it was to see him just light teams on fire for this run, I think that stops as soon as Jimmy Butler guards him. And that's going to be what's happening for all of these games, because that's the only team that matters at this point. So yeah, I don't see how Indiana wins this series. They're just too depleted, and Miami's at full strength.
Yeah. Bam Adebayo is also probably going to be a top 5 center or power forward. What are they playing him nowadays?
Who cares?
Center.
Yeah, who cares? But anyways, Bam looks great. Tyler Hero looks good. And I think the only concern I have is who's going to carry that load that Butler normally carried during the regular season.
Why can't it be Jimmy?
He can't score everything, Gino.
Well, then Miami's going to have trouble when they're not playing Indiana then.
What would their next one be? I guess the winner of...
The winner of... Well, they'll get Milwaukee.
2-7? Yeah.
They'll get Milwaukee.
Unless something catastrophic happens, they'll be getting Milwaukee.
So
All
wait,
right.
who are we predicting will end up? Are we thinking of like another matchup of Milwaukee-Toronto?
Yes. I think that it's going to be either... I think I like Toronto more than I like Boston, honestly.
Oh, definitely.
It will be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Boston took it. I think that they're a lot faster, and I also think that they're better at passing the ball. That said, I would say that, yes, indeed, Toronto is the better team.
So I think we then agree that Milwaukee probably comes out of the East?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I mean, have you seen their defensive numbers? They're insane. They allow 94 points per 100 possessions when Giannis is on the floor. That's nuts.
He's nuts. I should have picked him for everything again.
We even rookie of the year. Like they'll just give it to him.
He's a child in my eyes.
So who do you think is going to come out of the West then?
So let's see. I think LA beats Portland, and then I think Houston beats OKC. Though that's not a guarantee. I think that's going to be a coin
I
toss.
actually would take OKC just because I think that all you need is Harden to start clanging them, and then OKC can get an easy victory.
But if Houston just makes their open shots, their shot distribution's so perfect.
I mean, you could have said that before they missed 29 straight threes too. But
True. But I think regardless of who gets out of there, I think the Lakers, I like them over whichever team comes out of the 4-5.
You would. Oh, I was going to say, are we really?
Clippers. Like I agree with you about 4-5. But what happens by the time they get to the Clippers?
Yeah, so I think that it will be a Clippers-Lakers semifinals. And when that happens, I think I like the Clippers more than the Lakers.
Who do you think is going to stick Davis?
I think it will probably be Paul
Montrez?
George, I'd guess.
I would think Paul George before Montrez.
I think Trez, you probably... Does Trez even start for them?
No,
Zubats is starting. So it'd probably be Zubats to start, and then
shit.
when it's winning time, I think it's going to be Paul George or Kawhi, whoever wants him.
That's the thing.
Whichever.
Like, they can just throw anytime you can just throw George and Kawhi at like the other team's two best players, pretty much. That's a tough combo to beat.
Yeah, I just don't know. Like, Paul George or Kawhi will be able to guard LeBron. And I'm not saying, like, they'll shut him down or anything, but those are literally, like, the two best players in the league to guard LeBron. And then I think whichever one of them isn't guarding LeBron is actually a very good fit to guard Anthony Davis, because Davis is not, like, some low-post monster. He's an incredibly skilled power forward / center.
Sure.
Who
But I mean,
likes playing.
who do you put on JaVale?
Great point.
Oh, I mean...
Can't guard everybody. I don't know. I think you just leave JaVale unguarded and see what happens.
So, Gino, you would take the Clippers over the Lakers?
I'd take Clippers over Lakers.
Okay.
I would probably take the Clippers over the Lakers.
I think we're in accord here, then.
Okay, so we're thinking it's going to be Clippers, Bucks finals, and who do we think takes it?
I'd say Bucks and 7.
ZP?
I think that I'm actually going to take Clippers in 7.
Okay.
I think that as much as I like Chris Middleton, and I think that that man gets an undue amount of shit, there's a drop-off from Giannis to him.
I mean, there's drop off from Giannis to everybody.
To almost literally everyone in the league at this point. And Chris Middleton is a legit all-star. Like, legitimate number 2 guy at this point.
Yeah, but then...
I mean, you can say...
Then you go to Eric Bledsoe.
Who's also legit.
Mm,
He hasn't been in the playoffs at times, but he's a legit player.
okay.
He's an above-average point guard. He might be the 14th best point guard.
All right. I mean, there's no sense running down all of them. I might give you 14.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Bucks... My head says pick the Clippers in 7, but my heart says pick the Bucks in 7, and I want the Bucks to win. I want Giannis to get a championship.
Yeah, Kawhi already got his, and I don't really care if Paul George ever gets one, to be perfectly frank.
Yep, basically my stance. Kawhi's already gotten multiple. I don't care if Paul George gets one. I would like it if Sweet Lou could get one, but Giannis needs to start racking them up. Because he's one of the most unstoppable players I've ever seen.
Sweet Lou's career is never going to be defined by championships. Nobody's going to look back at Sweet Lou's legacy and be like, well, he never got a title.
Hey, remember that time he went to Magic City when he went out of the bubble?
That's the story of Sweet Lou.
Yep. I mean, I think that Giannis, when I said earlier that if JoJo actually dedicated himself to going to the weight room and not drinking Shirley Temples, he could be the most dominant low post player since Shaq. I think the answer is actually Giannis is already that. The most dominant low post player since Shaq.
Mm.
Like, anytime he gets near the rim, it's incredible how much he just bullies everyone out of the way and then dunks on them. And he starts from so much further out.
Yeah,
9 times out of 10.
I don't know if I'm completely ready to say that he's as dominant as, like, 2000 Shaq, though.
I mean, the numbers make that argument.
In the restricted zone, they're definitely comparable, excuse me. But, I don't know. I mean, we'd have to do a whole bunch of, like, errors.
Yeah, and I want to get into advanced stats on this podcast, but...
It's not prima facie ridiculous.
And that's hard to say with it.
Yeah.
Comparing anyone to 2000 Shaq.
Most definitely.
So yeah, he's like 2000 Shaq, who also shoots like 30-something% from 3 and also is the defensive player of the year.
That's
Just normal stuff.
It's a pretty good player to have.
Pretty good player to have. For some reason, he headbutted like a Brooklyn Nets player and was suspended
No,
for the 8th game of the bubble.
it was a Washington Wizards. Mo Wagner,
Even worse.
thanks very much.
Even worse. What are you doing? Don't soil your head with Mo Wagner's sweat. No reason to mess with Mo Wagner.
Or the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, just go on with your life.
Although Rui Hachimura looks real good.
He does. I love watching Rui Hachimura play. All right, so I think that's it for our Balls Deep rundown of the NBA Finals 2020. It's been a wild year. it's wild that we're having this conversation in August instead of doing our preseason 2021 stuff. But here we are. I can't wait to see how this season ends. So thank you, Pete.
Yeah, always a pleasure to talk hoops with you guys, especially when we get, weird, crazy stuff to discuss like this.
Thank you, ZP.
Both teams played hard.
Thank you, listeners. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And you can support the show at patreon.com/deeplistens. Till next time, peace.